G'day, it's Mark, and welcome back to the channel. Also, just wanted to say thanks very much for everyone who's been subscribing. Got well over 6,000 subscribers now, as at the time of this video, and really appreciate it. And so if you haven't already subscribed, or if you're not sure you have, just double check and please do subscribe, because it does really help the channel. Plus, give the episode a thumbs up, because it just enables the videos to be seen by more car enthusiasts. So if you love Australian car history and American car history and other vehicles, automotive history, restoration projects, I've got my 57 Ford F-250 and my EB V8 gear. Please subscribe and watch the videos. And now let's get into it. So today's video is as part of the Fairlane series. If you haven't already checked that out, check out the ZA and the ZB, the first two episodes in the Fairlane series. Today's episode is the ZC, the Fairlane with the heart of a GT, and it's in my top 3 Fairlanes of all time. The ZC Fairlane was produced from July 1969 to November 1970. Early design work for the ZC Fairlane was commenced around the same time as the ZA Fairlane was released, and the product planners wanted to as part of the brief, differentiate the Fairlane even more from the Falcon series, and obviously it picked up cues from the XW Falcon. And this included that recessed rear glass with the buttress styling in the C-pillars, but this was accentuated in the Fairlane. Designers Jack Telnack and Brian Rossi wanted to increase differentiation of the Ford Fairlane, not just from the Falcon series, but also from the previous ZA and ZB series. So the headlights changed from a horizontal theme to a vertical theme, and this was inspired by the Ford Galaxies that were sold in Australia for 1965 through to 1967. To complement the vertical headlights, there was an all-new grille treatment. Plus at the back, there were wraparound tail lights and indicators, and these replaced the previous square designs of the ZA and ZB series. The overall effect of the new design was to make the car look larger with the imposing front end treatment with the vertical headlights, while the C-pillar with the buttress style elongated the design to make the car look longer. So overall, a larger looking car than the ZA and ZB Fairlane. The ZC Fairlane continued the success that had been exhibited by the ZA and ZB, which was market leadership in the luxury car segment. The ZC now came up against the HT Holden Brougham and the VIP Valiant. However, the car, being the Fairlane, was still more differentiated than its competitors, and this was reflected in the sales figures. I would make the point, though, that in terms of the VIP, it certainly had improved, I think, in terms of differentiation with a longer wheelbase, new 4 headlight treatment, new grille, new tail lights, a limousine type rear window. It did actually present a very nice package, also a very nice interior as well, with the floor shifter, the bucket seats. It was a good package. However, the Fairlane still significantly outsold it, and I'll go into a few reasons why a bit further in the video. As part of the design process, there were a number of themes that were considered for the Fairlane that were discarded. One of them was a rear wheel spat. I'm certainly glad that they did discard that. I don't think that added anything to the vehicle at all. It made it look very dowdy, in fact. The other one that they considered were recessed door handles, and certainly that would have provided a more modern design theme to the handles that they went with. But that would mean that they would have to update the door handles on all the range, including the Falcons. It wasn't practical to have recessed door handles just for the Fairlane. The volume would never justify it. So that would have to wait until the XA series and the ZF. A number of interior design themes were also considered. The brief here was to further differentiate the Fairlane from the Falcon series. The final design for the dashboard, there were a few considered. I quite like this design here. That it was a very horizontal theme, but I thought the blackout treatment for the instruments was probably clearer and a little bit more effective than the final design, which was approved, which had more of a silver theme. I think particularly in Australia, we get a lot of direct sunlight, bright light a black instrument panel in terms of the the dashboard itself made more sense in terms of legibility, but the final design was still very handsome, and it was certainly different from the Falcon series. Also under consideration were a number of seating materials and designs. You can see here some of the early designs that were considered. These designs are for the Fairlane Custom, which was still the base model available with a 6-cylinder engine. I'll get into that in a bit more detail shortly. But here's two design themes for the interior of the Custom. And then here's a mock-up for the Fairlane 500, which came standard with the bucket seats. Available engines in the Fairlane. The Fairlane Custom, which was the base model, had the 3.6 litre 221 cubic inch engine that had 140 horsepower or 104 kilowatts and 210 foot-pounds of torque, which is 285 newton meters. Also available was the 302, the Mustang 302, which had 220 horsepower or 164 kilowatts and 300 foot-pounds of torque or 407 newton meters. Top of the range was the Ford 5.8 351 engine, and this had 290 horsepower. It was actually the same engine. It's a high compression V8, and it was the same V8 that was available in the XW Falcon GT, which is a little known fact. A lot of people think it was, most Fairlanes tended to offer a 2-barrel V8 in some of the other models. For example, the following ZD model offered a 2-barrel V8, and this 4-barrel high compression V8 was the same as the XW GT, so literally a Fairlane with the heart of a GT. That had 355 foot-pounds of torque or 481 newton meters. Dimensions for the ZC Fairlane were 196.3 inches long or 4,986 millimeters, 73.5 inches wide or 1,867 millimeters, 55.8 inches high or 1,417 millimeters, and a wheelbase of 116 inches or 2,946 millimeters. Ford certainly had a performance theme for the ZC Fairlane. There were some quite unusual and very rare options available. And just running through the range, the 3.6 litre 140 horsepower engine in the Custom was standard with a 3-speed fully synchroed manual on the column. There was an optional 3-speed Cruise-O-Matic column shift automatic. There was also available a 3-speed T-bar floor shift, and that was available a T-bar for the first time in the ZC Fairlane. That'd be very rare. And also, even probably more rare, was a 4-speed fully synchromesh manual on the floor. The standard engine in the Fairlane 500, but optional in the Fairlane Custom. The standard engine was a 3-speed manual on the column that was optional for the Fairlane Custom. It wasn't available in the Fairlane 500. The 3-speed Cruise-O-Matic column shift, that was optional in the Fairlane Custom and standard in the Fairlane 500. Optional for both models was the 3-speed T-bar Cruise-O-Matic floor shift, or a 4-speed fully synchromesh manual on the floor. So a 4-speed manual on the floor, 5-litre, 220 horsepower Mustang V8. That would be very, very rare. And that was available on both the Custom and on the Fairlane 500. In addition, and this is particularly cool, the 290 horsepower 4-barrel GT V8, the 5.8, was available as an option on both the Custom Fairlane and the Fairlane 500 with a 3-speed automatic column shift, also a 3-speed T-bar automatic floor shift, or a 4-speed fully synchromesh floor shift manual. So in other words, you could buy a Fairlane Custom, which I've never seen, but I have seen a Fairlane 500. In fact, I've seen two of them with a 351 GT powered, effectively, Ford Fairlane with a 4-speed floor shifted manual. Very, very rare car and very desirable. And here's a summary from the factory brochure, which just gives you a summary, I guess, of all the available engine and transmission options for the Fairlane Custom and the Fairlane 500. As I said, the Fairlane Custom was available with the 6-cylinder engine. This was really the base model. I'm not sure exactly what the sales volume of the Custom was. I don't think it would have been that high, but it was available with a 6-cylinder engine. It also came with bench seat, but it also had things like courtesy lights that were operated on all doors, glove box light. So, it still was reasonably well equipped, but I guess it was more like a Falcon 500 in a Fairlane wheelbase, I guess you could say. The Fairlane 500, which had the standard 5-litre V8, 302, 220 horsepower Mustang V8, or the 351 as an option. And the Fairlane 500 was really, the car that was the volume seller. Interestingly enough, when you look at the sales brochures, you can see here, this would have been a mock-up from the agency, an early one. You can see that in the brochure, they've actually located the 351 badge at the top of the front fender or mudguard, which is incorrect. The 351 badge actually resides in the lower front quarter of the car. So that was just an early, I guess, change or something that was incorrect for the early brochures, something to pick up if you're a bit of a train spotter. Also, just out of interest, I've actually got a South African brochure on the ZC Fairlane. And that is actually quite, not that I can read it, but in terms of the specs, that is quite interesting. In the South African brochure, they actually don't list the 6-cylinder at all. Maybe that's because of the price point for the car by the time it was made available in Africa. Maybe a 6-cylinder was regarded as, there was no market for that. But they've got the 5-litre engine. They describe that, I guess, in the same way as the Australian engine. But interestingly enough, in the 351, which we would call a 5.8, they actually call it a 5.7 litre engine, not a 5.8 litre. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I've just given you an image of it here, an extract from the brochure. So, the South African brochures are quite interesting. A little bit like, if you haven't seen the episode on my Japanese Chrysler VH brochure, the Charger and the Chrysler by Chrysler, it's quite interesting to see some of the export models and the variations in the specifications to what was available in our local market. Check that episode out if you haven't already seen that. Just worth mentioning a couple of other styling features. If you look at the side profile of the ZC Fairlane, you can see that that lower sill trim actually was featured in the front guard through the lower sill of the body and then into the rear quarters. And this also gave the impression of elongating the design of the car when you compare that to, say, a ZB Fairlane. So Ford designers were certainly wanting to make the car look bigger and longer, than the previous model, but also to, I think, help justify the premium and lunch off that Ford Galaxy styling to some degree, particularly, as I said, with those vertical headlights. By this time, though, in 69, the Ford Galaxy was then using a different design theme with concealed headlights. One of my favourite model Ford Galaxies, 69 model. But, they wanted that big car look. Available colours for the Fairlane were Onyx Black, Polar White, Imperial Burgundy, Diamond White, Harmony Grey, Candy Apple Red, Reef Green, Lime Frost, Luster Bronze, Opal Glow, Grecian Gold, Silver Fox, Battlement Grey, Starlight Blue, and that was it. There were some special option colours that you could get probably at special order. Ford did have a reputation for basically painting a car whatever colour you wanted as long as you paid the extra money. So things like Vermilion Fire or Yukon Yellow or Zircon Green weren't listed as being available in those models, but I'm sure if you were a customer and you were prepared to pay for it, you could have ordered those colours. Back in the early 1980s, my brother actually had a ZC 351 Fairlane. It was white with a black vinyl roof, column shift auto. And I think in 1982, he got married that year, went on his honeymoon, and he lent me the car. I was able to drive it for a week or so while he was on his honeymoon. I've got to say, I thoroughly enjoyed it. My dad and my brother had rebuilt the engine. It had a blown head gasket, so they fixed that over a weekend or so, and the car was absolutely running beautifully. It was a really easy car to drive, had heaps and heaps of power, And that's one of those cars that you sort of say, gee, I wish we had have kept that car. We're sorry we sold it. I'd love to have a ZC Fairlane today. As I said, it's in my top 3 all-time best Fairlanes. During this period, Ford was really getting into, going Ford's the going thing and the whole performance muscle car era. And this did also rub off on the Fairlane. As I said, the fact that you could get a 290 horsepower, high compression V8 out of the GT in your Ford Fairlane, and even a floor shift manual transmission 4-speed. I mean, that just goes to show, Ford were pretty serious about performance. But some other options that were available on the Fairlane 500 were integrated air conditioning. That was available for the first time in the ZC model. Also the vinyl roof, which could get in black or parchment. Laminated graduated tinted windscreen. A bench seat if you wanted that in the Fairlane 500, because that was what was standard in the custom. Rear lap and lap sash seat belts. Push button radio was still an option. Remote control exterior rear view mirror on the driver's side. And as I say, you could really option these cars up, as a sort of a performance luxury vehicle. And as I say, ZC Fairlane, I reckon, is just an absolutely terrific looking car. Total ZC Fairlane sales were 12,513 vehicles. So this, at this point, was the most popular Fairlane to date. So that was the history on the Fairlane ZC. Please make sure, if you haven't already, check out the ZA and the ZB in the Auto History series. You can also check out history series on the Ford Falcon from XK right through to the FGX, plus the Holden Commodore, the Chrysler Valiant, and a lot more. Please remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give the episode a thumbs up. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.